Welcome to Capitalizing Your Life, the podcast that shows you how to take control of your money, build lasting wealth, and create financial freedom using the infinite banking concept. If you're ready to make your cash flow work for you instead of someone else, you're in the right place. Here's your host, Glenn Yaney.
Welcome to the inaugural Capitalizing Your Life podcast. Today's is going to be the first episode of what my new vision of my podcast will be. I know that in the past, we've always interviewed financially independent real estate operators and people that are in business. And something didn't really sit right with me with really the missing item, which I believe is how we structure our finances to become financially independent. I think that everybody understands buying real estate. I think the biggest problem is where people have put their money, where they're storing it for wealth, and how they capitalize on those opportunities. And I think for me, I've had a long journey to get into where I'm at today. And I wanted to be able to relay that message to my listeners, to be able to, explain how I got to where I'm at today, and really of the future for the podcast, which I've really loved doing. And I think that over time, it will be more effective in teaching people how to become financially independent compared to hearing other people's stories of how they raise capital or buying multifamily real estate. I think it's more of like how do you structure your own personal house to be able to capitalize on future deals. So what I was going to do for this episode, which is the introductory episode of Capitalizing Your Life podcast, is go over my financial story. And it might be a little bit long and might get a little detailed, but I believe that there's certain things that have happened in my life that made me get a high respect for keeping capital on hand, being able to be opportunistic with the money in my bank account, and the things that have held me back from growing whenever I could have gone faster, really. So really where it all started was working at Red Lobster. I know that a lot of people have heard my story, but this will be more in depth than a normal podcast where I've been on other people's podcasts. So I was working at Red Lobster. I met my GM and he told me whenever he was giving, going through the paychecks, and he was saying, you should really think about contributing some money into your 401k. And I knew nothing about any finances. I was about 20 years old. So he said, just put a little bit in there at a time and it'll grow to be something large one day. And he's like, and you'll be glad you did it. So I started doing that. And I think what that looked like was about $50 to $100 a month. And, because I was making about $23,000 a year there. And, I just didn't have any money left over every month. I had the most money I had was on Monday after a weekend of tips. And I learned then to pay myself first. And what the 401k does also is you pay yourself first. So you're kind of serving two masters. You have a 401k, and then you're trying to save up some cash on the side to do something else with. And I was never able to save money. And there's people around me that were saving like $1,000, $10,000, but I never was able to accumulate anything until I started paying myself first. And that's how that happened when I was working at Red Lobster. And the first thing I saved up for was my real estate license. And so, I had to save up $1,000, and it took me about 20 weeks to do that because it was $50 every Monday that I would put into a separate account that I was unable to use, or it was very hard for me to get to. So after that point, I got into real estate, which at that point there was hedge funds or institutional money coming in and buying real estate at the time. And I was trying to find a first-time home buyer to find their first home. And at that time, it was very difficult to do because every house that in my location was very hard to purchase. So what I started doing is became more of a rental agent because of the institutional capital buying the houses. The houses would be already under contract by the time I would end up, buying these properties or be able to show these properties. So I started showing rentals. And I was the only person in the office. There was a bunch of real estate agents in the office that were doing very well, making 100 to 150,000. The top producer was around 300 to 500,000 a year. And I would just take their rental leads and show them. And it was kind of like, whatever I had to do to make money just because I wanted to be in real estate. So I started showing rentals, and I came across one listing that was going to pay I think it was $1,000 for each rental that you lease for, and it was an institution. I ended up showing all of their units, and within 2 months, I went from Red Lobster making $1,500 a month to about $15,000 a month, and it was something that I couldn't believe it. I couldn't, from going 1,500 to 15,000 was like life changing. And I quickly started I was recruited by that company is what ended up happening. And all I knew at that point was that I needed to pay off the car just so I could live a little bit easier because I'm used to Red Lobster pay $1,500 a month. And so I acted as if I wasn't going to work there forever because I really didn't think so. I thought it was just going to be a 6-month job. Once all these properties are gone, they're not going to need another leasing agent. And so I saved as much as I could. And the first year I made about $150,000 in the first year, from 23,000 to 150,000. So I started meeting with some people and reading about finances. And what I read was just put your money in your 401k and pay off your debt. And then whatever money is left over, then you can buy real estate for financial freedom. That for me, I did for 5 years. I maxed out my 401k and I would, pay off debt. I would dabble with, stocks and really just trying to learn what to do. And I had no idea. And it's literally, if you just open up Google and type in, how do you invest? It would be the question. You'd come up with 100 answers. Really, the main ones would be stock market, real estate, and continuously put money in your 401k. And what I started doing is I started really looking into people that were successful in real estate. And I had 3 really mentors at the time. The first one was a guy who's my business partner today. He had 20 units. And then the second person he had about 600 units. And the third one was he had about 2,000 units under management. And what I would do on my days off is go see what they were doing. And over time, I would come with feedback, like to tell them what they need to do better. And I would say, you should look into putting your money in your 401k so you could save on taxes. And, they would just listen to me. They never really gave me any bad feedback. They said, that's a good idea. You should do that, blah, blah, blah. But then I started realizing what they were doing and not what I was doing. And they were literally only investing in cash flowing assets. And I was investing in my 401k, and whatever money was left over, I would try to figure out a way to come up with some money for real estate. So through that, I was able to buy my own. I bought a small condo, single family home, and it would treat it as my primary, move into it, fix it up. And then within a year or two, I would move out, turn it into a rental, and then move on to the next, which did work out for me. But through that, there was also learning lessons. You learn how much construction cost really turns into. And, I still had this idea that I needed to pay off debt. Even when the debt was cheaper, it was, I think it was about 5.3% on the condo, and it was like 4.5% on the house. So as I'm doing this, I'm like having almost like a shotgun approach where I would take my money, put it in my 401k, look for investments, and then also I'd pay down debt. And the problem with paying down debt is it becomes illiquid after that. And the money, it turns into money that all it's doing is saving you the interest that you would have been paying, which is 5.3%. And if you look at how much I actually would have been able to make, whether it's areas in my life that could have improved is my income, or if I would have been able to maybe buy another property that could have increased my income a little bit more, it would have made me way over 5.3% on those real estate deals. Hey guys, if you'd like to learn more about the infinite banking concept and how to flow your capital through your own financing system, my team and I are here to help. With over 35 years of experience, we can guide you in building a properly structured whole life policy tailored to you and your family. See the scheduling link below. Now, back to the show. So there's small lessons learned along the way. I put my money into the stock market where when the market would tank, it was almost like the money was short-term money, where it was like, I'm going to take this money one day and put it into real estate. But for now, I'm going to keep it into the stock market. So what ended up happening is when the market would go down, I'd get really nervous because I thought it was going to go down even more or something else would happen to it. So I would always get nervous, panic sell, or I would get myself I've invested in leverage stocks, which is like times 4 and I've lost money just because I had no idea what I was doing. And really, most stocks investing is like speculative. It's like, do we really know what's going to happen in the next year or so? But when you're buying into a cash flowing asset, your cash flows are very, predictable compared to buying into a stock that your values could drop in half, or you could lose 25% of your investment, and you essentially lose it if you sell. So I learned that I don't know if I want to buy stocks anymore. I slowly started understanding that maybe I shouldn't put any money in my 401k. The media tells you that it's one of the best places you could save money. And the problem with the 401k is that you're putting money. I mean, if I'm, say if I'm making $100,000 to $150,000 a year, and my goal is to make $1 million a year, I'm deferring my taxes for the day that I'm going to be making $1 million a year. So that business plan doesn't work for me. And if I were to continue to do that, it would only hurt me longer. So like I could pay my lower taxes today, or to not have to pay as big later because I'll have a higher income then. And also what it does is it absorbs all the cash that I have that I could probably put it into a cash flowing asset. So if my expenses were about at the time it was about between 3,000 and 5,000 a month, I was unable to, invest in those real estate deals. What would end up happening is I would, either pay down debt or, put money in my 401k and then wonder why I didn't have any money left over to buy these deals that I see. And the thing that I would always say to myself, if I had the money, I would buy that. And I would have to go around talking to people, trying to figure out if they wanted to buy it and trying to convince them that it was a good idea to buy it. And at that point, I didn't have the capital to do it. So that's where I started really seeing holes in my financial plan, when I'm trying to convince people to buy properties that I would buy if I had the money. So why don't I have the money? It's because I'm putting it into my 401k or paying down low interest debt and not keeping my reserves liquid. So once I came to the conclusion that I no longer need to put my money in my 401k or pay off debt, I just need to put it in a savings account, which is very difficult to have cash liquid on the side, because everybody tells you that, cash is trash, or the cash that you have on hand is not earning you interest. But there's a whole nother side to that, which is actually earning you interest by the future returns that you're going to make when you actually do find the asset that makes you financially independent. And that's what happened for me. Is I found a 3-unit, and then I came across a 9-unit mobile home park. And the first one paid me about $1,000 cash flow in the first month, or in the first year. It started paying me $1,000 a month. And then the second one was a little bit better, and it paid me about $3,000 to $4,000 a month once I got it a little bit stabilized. If I would have bought on the cap rate, I don't know if it would have been a great deal. And I think a lot of people focus on the cap rates, but if you look at what the future returns are going to be for you personally, you won't overlook so many deals. But if you understand the cash flows and the income that the property is going to make you in the future, you might be able to pay a different price than somebody else that's looking at the current cap rate today, which I've seen a lot since, in buying real estate. So that happened. And then I actually had one of my single family homes had about $100,000 of equity that I had paid down. What I did to pay that one down is called velocity banking. So I had about $170,000 mortgage on the property. And what I would do is I took a line of credit, and then I started paying down my house until I got to about, I think it was $90,000 of principal left to pay. And what I did is I recasted the mortgage. So what that recast does is it stretches the mortgage back out over the term of the loan, like as if you were to pay it out over the full course of the loan. So that means that if I would have not recasted it, I would have had 15 years left to the loan. But instead, since I paid it down so aggressively, I could stretch it right back out, and I got it to 29 years, and my monthly mortgage was $500 a month. And that was the thing that actually helped me move into my next primary house. But then once I did that, I was constantly seeking ways to access the capital, whether I get a line of credit on it, a bigger line of credit, or do I go back to the bank and give them all my financials to get a better refinance. And I actually had to do that. So I went and refinanced the property, pulled out $50,000. And after I've already paid it off, and within 6 months of doing that, the appreciation went up a little bit more. And then I decided I'm just going to sell the property, and selling the property gave me about $100,000 in my bank account. And now I have this 3-unit and the 9-unit mobile home park, and, available. It's paying all my overhead. So I'm technically financially independent at that point. I don't know if it's financially free, but it covered all my overhead. And so when I did that, it turned into, I was able to pretty much leave my W-2 job, because my W-2 job was a great job, very demanding, 6 to 7 days a week. And I was making about $150,000 a year. But what we started doing is we started buying small multifamily deals, and then we ended up buying mobile home parks once we saw that how well they cash flowed. And we ended up getting it to about 200 units by the time I left my W-2. And so with that, I turned, I wasn't making any money. I was making about $1,500 a month by managing the properties, but I built out a management company because that was my background. I worked at a big institutional property management company, and then I just decided to use those same things that I learned there and just started implementing it in our own properties that we owned. So over time, we just constantly look for more deals, growing the portfolio to up to 650 units. And with those 650 units, we just grew very quickly. In 2024, we had 350 units and we doubled in size. The one thing I've learned through doing all this is having a value and having a reserve. When you're running that hot, you're redlining the whole time. There's very little money in your bank account. You're constantly finding another deal to put an escrow in. There's other deals that are falling short that you have to come up with the money to pay for capital expenditures. So when that happened, I started researching. I've always been a big financial independence person, always researched it. But as you've heard on my previous podcast on Millionaire Journey, you've heard me talk with Infinite Banking Concept, IBC professionals. Also, life insurance is what it comes down to. And what I've learned through Infinite Banking Concept is that it's the perfect place to put your capital first before you decide to go invest it. It's the and asset. So what I ended up doing in the middle of January or middle of June of I think it was 2023 actually. It might have been 24. But so as I did that, I always was skeptical on life insurance, of course. I don't know anybody that wouldn't be skeptical at first, is what I would say. But what I had learned is that I might have been listening to the wrong people. And I had 3 people tell me that I looked up to, people that were very successful, way further along. They told me that, that you should look into, getting whole life insurance, and they're good long-term asset to hold on to, and then I had a few people that died, and I think it was 2024, that kind of left their family with a lot to figure out financially. And I thought to myself, if that were to happen to me, that would be terrible for my family. And, with my wife, she's a stay-at-home mom. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old now. These people all rely on me to create an income. And I have a lot of business partners, which unfortunately, I think if like something bad were to happen, I don't know how those business partners would treat my wife. So I learned then that she needs to be taken care of, and I don't want anybody's life to change if I were to pass away. That was one reason, but then also I needed to capitalize my system. And whenever you are putting your money into whole life policies properly structured, there is a capitalizing process, but over time, within 3 years, 3 to 5 years, for my policy and the ones I've seen, they are dollar for dollar. So you put $1 in, you get $1 of cash value. So for me, I decided that I was going to do the same thing. And even then, I was still skeptical of it, but there was enough information to know that I wasn't going to be scammed. So I did a ton of research, read 20 books about the infinite banking concept and the process on how to get there and how to build your policies. And the great thing is just that I came across some good mentors in the business. I would find things wrong, and then I would call them, and then they would tell me, no, that's right. You're doing the right thing, blah, blah, blah. So there's many ways to structure a policy, but I would say that doing it the right way is very important. So the guys that I work with are with Create Tailwind. It's Nick Costco and Jim Oliver. They have over 35 years of experience, which is very rare to see. So I thought that I'm with good people They have long-term thinking. And so anyways, through all that, I started capitalizing my system. 2024 of October, the two hurricanes came through, Hurricane Helene and Milton. Those two hurricanes came through. One flooded my house, and then the other one hit our properties pretty hard. One of the properties that took the biggest beating was my own, the 3-unit and the 9-unit. So I had about $50,000 saved cash in the bank at that time because I realized that I was starting to see that I needed to save some cash. And after that hurricane, I had to pretty much come up with $125,000, which was unexpected. You know, I have enough income. My income was good at the time. And through all of this, my income, it almost got cut in half is really what happened because a lot of the properties were undercapitalized with the hurricanes hitting them. So there was like death by 1,000 cuts every single day or every other day. I'm paying about a $1,500 electric bill for electric meters being knocked down. So it was a pretty not catastrophic, but it was pretty bad. And a lot of money going out. There was about $400,000 of expenses in November, but for me personally, it was $125,000 between October to about February. And it was very quick. Had to figure out how to raise capital for myself, borrowing money from friends to be able to capitalize my system. So I was able to do that and even had more of a respect on a healthy reserve. And what I've learned about reserves is the fact that, it's the most important tier that we have. And the reserves will keep your income stable. Because if you have reserves, you're not having to dip into all of your future income. So pretty much what was happening is that every single rent check that I was getting was going right back out. And then all the reserves I had were depleted through all that. So it was definitely a learning lesson. And that gave me even more of a respect for the infinite banking concept and building a reserve, capitalizing my system. And I think if I wouldn't have gone through that, I don't know if I would have had, it's like all this work that I had from 2013, saving up, putting it into my 401k, figuring out how to raise capital. It's like without going out and learning, having these problems that come up, it's like the real problem is having the reserve to be able to take action when you need to. So in that case, it was like when I was at my W-2 job, I needed the reserve to go and buy future deals. And in this scenario, when I'm fully self-employed and I have no other income except for my real estate, having a healthy reserve for when two hurricanes hit, which is going to happen for everybody one day, you just don't want it to wreck your financial show. It's just like, that's pretty much what was happening. So I grew to respect it. And the more I learn about the infinite banking concept, it's becoming more of a passion for me to be able to teach other people. And that's why I've, went out. I'm in the process of becoming a infinite banking practitioner and to be able to help people structure their cash flow. And that's really what the infinite banking concept is just structuring your cash flow for the everyday needs in life. And so the next couple episodes, I'm going to have Jim Oliver and Nick Costco. We're going to go over a few topics and we're going to learn about a different mindset to how to structure the finances to be able to capitalize on your own deals. And has more of a calling to me than, interviewing people that are syndicating deals, because in the end, I think that most of the listeners that I talk to are just looking to figure out a way out of the rat race and being able to capitalize your system to be able to take action when you need to and remove the debt burdens that are slowing you down. I think that is the number one thing I would love to help people with. And I think at the end of the day, that would feel most fulfilling for me. So with that, we'll go over many topics, but I'm excited to start this endeavor with you. And I'm excited for you to reach out, give me feedback, press the like button if you like the content. I'll have all my contact information below just for you to reach out if you have any questions. And thank you, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Capitalizing Your Life podcast. Please rate, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share with someone who you think would enjoy listening.